If you recall from last week, I was mentioning in regards to this channel of consciousness about tempo and temperature. I want to reinforce and perhaps detail just a little bit more something I mentioned. In the everyday world of life just operating through man, to alter behavior in someone requires that either the tempo or the temperature be increased through such things as my eternal drunk having a wreck one night and killing his wife and injuring his child, or through my eternal drunk finding out his liver is about to explode. What seems to be in life of an external occurrence, if it is going to alter, but I'm talking about in a very strict, absolute, mechanical fashion, wherein is belied the idea of any change in the sense that we speak of it. But the alteration of behavior requires that one of those be increased. Now, what I want to be sure that you understand a little more clearly is what I was speaking about passion, and I said I was not talking about any ordinary passion. But real passion requires this, that you've got to increase both aspects, even though they can be seen in the same sense as being energy equates to mass in different states. But to create a kind of real passion wherein you can not only alter your own behavior willfully, you're altering your understanding of it. Now, anyone who has understood anything out of the ordinary through their efforts involved with this, even though you had no awareness at the time, it was not necessary, what I'm telling you has happened is at that moment, it seemed to be the surrounding moments that something was going on that seemed to culminate, at least for a few seconds or for a period of time, in some kind of extraordinary understanding. What happened was that both the tempo and the temperature were increased. Now, even besides my mechanical examples of external events apparently altering one's behavior, in ordinary life, the way life uses us through man, through salesmen, through ordinary men of the cloth, faith healers, even in a sexual encounter, when people are exchanging heat, and apparently one person is trying to gain something from the other one, if good salesmanship, just in the ordinary sense, takes place, then in the salesman, in the person who apparently got a heat increase, who apparently gained from the exchange, that person unknowingly increased either their tempo or the temperature of what was going on. Now, that can produce, from ordinary viewpoints, very startling occurrences. History books, even your own experience, has shown such examples wherein apparently something extraordinary happened. I had no interest, or I had no intention of buying a car. I was waiting on somebody, and I walked into the showroom, and I'll be a son of a bitch. That guy was so good. 2.5 hours later, I walked out of there, and I had a key in my hand, and my name had been signed to a sales agreement. The man was astounding. There was an increase in either the temperature or the tempo. But that which passes for some sort of magic, that which I am or have been including under real passion, would require that someone willfully increase the tempo and the temperature. And if you like, I could give you a formula for it of real passion, and since I keep having to invent a small new vocabulary, at least I don't make up too many weird words, but real passion with a capital R and a capital P. You could say it would equal tempo times temperature. Or you could say that real passion would equal intensity times heat. But it would have to be that both of them were increased. And a shorthand way of saying that, which is really a long-handed way of saying it because that is a more verbal, descriptive phrase, is not just increasing both, it is one times the other. It is only through that you can willfully change the way you act. Not being dependent upon, as all of you should be able to see by now, unless you're actually in the jaws of it, that every time, under any ordinary circumstance, that you feel the inclination that I'm going to stop doing something I'm doing, I just feel as though the breath of the gods came upon me and said, you should stop doing so-and-so. The times before you got here, that the times something a voice would tell you, you have got to quit drinking every afternoon, or you've got to quit taking all of these substances into your body. I just know that I should. Any time that apparently, even for a short period of time, had an effect on your behavior, you should be able to look back in your own nervous system now and see that it was always preceded by having a terrible, terrible hangover, beginning to hallucinate, getting up one morning after years and years of drinking constantly, you get up and you can't remember what happened since 7 o'clock the previous evening, and yet you know that you were up at daylight. You remember coming home. Or you get up and you're spitting up blood. It is always something that apparently is not I. It is always something that was a part of an apparent external occurrence. Always precedes any feeling of I have got to change. I have got to alter something in my behavior. And if the temperature or the tempo of your consciousness, your awareness, your connection to what seems to be this, quote, problem, is increased sufficiently. Maybe spitting up blood once won't do it. Maybe blacking out from drinking one time won't do it. It may take 2 or 3 times. It may take 2 or 3 times, and then you wake up in bed with 3 strangers you've never seen before, and 2 of them claim to be married to you. It has got to be something that increases to an amount that will alter the channel of your own consciousness, either through an increase in the temperature or the tempo, to even mechanically alter your behavior. But to do it, whatever this means, which I'm not going to define it, everyone throws the term around, but for you to willfully do it, that is to do it, and there is no preceding external event to decide to do something. And of course, such a decision would have to be based upon some kind of extraordinary, out of the usual understanding of what you were doing. For instance, to use what should be fairly easy, at least they're visible examples, such as drinking. I pointed out to everyone when I said you've got to stop drinking unless we're having a party and we're all together. That you cannot drink every day, not because alcohol is the work of the devil, but I pointed out that if I let you go long enough, and if you were properly attracted and involved with this, the day would come that would strike you. You would not have to spit up blood. You would not have to black out. It would strike you for reasons that are not necessary in the ordinary world, that drinking is interfering with me doing this. Not in any moralistic sense, not in any sense that makes sense. But see, this does not happen in ordinary life. You should be able to hear this by now. For people to say, I took some willful action, I finally decided that such and such that I'm doing is detrimental to my health. Of course, that is normally what happens. If somebody decides, I have got to lose weight, but you find out that he either read an article, some friend told him, or he went for a yearly checkup, and some physician scared the hell out of him about overweight. For every 10 pounds you're overweight at your age, it's taking a year off of your life. That something happened. There's no such thing as people suddenly, based upon some understanding. Of course, they can say, well, I understand now. There's enough medical research in to show the dangers of drinking. You know, like the man's been doing it for 40 years. He says, now I suddenly realize the dangers of it, and I am intelligent enough to stop. Some, apparently not I, occurrence preceded this. To be able to do something in a manner that would truly be willful would have to be based upon your understanding of it. Not whatever the proposed alteration of your behavior is in regards to something that apparently is happening, of you spitting up blood and blacking out or reading new medical reports that says alcohol is a deadly drug. It would be based upon you understanding that what I'm attempting to do is at loggerheads with this, thus this has got to stop. But to do that requires that you be able to increase both the tempo and the temperature. It is the same kind of passion, not just to alter behavior, but it is the same kind of thing as I was attempting to indicate that is involved when someone has periods of being able to see. It is that rush of excitement. It is people feeling as though there's nothing in the world right now I couldn't do, probably, and yet there's nothing in the world I want to do. Another area of this that I want to bring up to date from several weeks back. If you remember the example I was giving of what seems to be in the external world, of those in power always raising the specter to the populace of potential, if not impending, enemies. Now, as long as ordinary line-level awareness is allowed to raise in each person this continuing specter of an internal enemy and threats, then the channel of consciousness is going to remain constant and it's going to remain stagnant. And there are many, many ways that I could comment further on that. But on the basis of what I was mentioning last week, of this channel of consciousness wherein there is the apparent ability for expansion and obviously of contraction in what I normally just refer to as line-level consciousness. As long as one's own personal awareness is allowed to, unchecked and given a full hearing, raise the continuing specter of the internal enemies and the threats, speaking in a very mechanical way now, just what is already in you, what is already wired up in you, as long as it is allowed to do that, then your own channel of consciousness is going to remain absolutely constant and stagnant. It cannot expand, you cannot change, you cannot increase the tempo, you cannot increase the temperature of it. And the one way in which I can give you a verbal sketch of it is all of the consciousness. The total energy that seems to distinguish man from everything else stays involved, not with heating itself up, not in increasing the tempo, the molecular agitation to heat this thing up where it will open up. It stays involved with fighting, or at least worrying about, these imaginary enemies. I guess like everything else, this is very difficult to say directly, because I've been hinting and pointing at this in different ways over the last year and a half, and on several occasions I pointed out to you that to try and put this in words as simply as possible almost brings one to the point that certain areas of psychology and the ordinary level of consciousness in contemporary humanity is already involved with, and that is the feeling, the proposed feeling, that I'm okay and you're okay. That you're not really as bad off as you think, that we're all, since psychology doesn't use the term we're all God's little children, at least we're all victims of the same kinds of traumas and bruises that contemporary life inflicts upon everyone. And therefore, just because you are scared to death of brown paper bags does not mean that you're in some way less of an important person, because I understand that you can play the harmonica, and that you raise flowers, and that you're fairly decent to your mother. And so don't let this get you. Help is available. Something can be done about this. There must be a cause for it. I too, for instance, have a certain, I'm not sure I'd say phobia, but I have a certain uneasiness being around wax paper. So, you know, we're all sort of in the same boat. But the subtle crack wherein it goes at a right angle to all of this, you understand by now, like everything else, to say, hey, just like you are, if we're talking about ordinary people, just like you are, your phobia about paper bags and all, that's just right. Now, if you don't think it's just right and you want to change it, that's just right too. If you have learned to live with it, if you decide it's not that weird, that's just right. And by the way, if I, a psychologist or just an ordinary, contemporary, sophisticated person, if I think that your fear of brown paper bags is something completely out of the ordinary, that's okay. But if I am sophisticated and hip enough to understand that we all have our little idiosyncrasies, then that's all right. So you understand what you're doing is all right, what I'm doing is all right. Now let's go have some quiche. That is true and correct, and yet it's not true and it's not correct. Because if it was true and correct for everyone, I'm talking about everyone, we would not be here. Everyone's, just your ordinary sense of I, of what you always took as being you before now. You should be able to see, once I pointed out in words, that everyone's apparent self continually raises the specter, the fear. It's always pointing, it always has messages, suspicions, that there are a non-ending string of potential enemies, if not immediate threats, inside. We're just discounting outside for the time being. But inside, I am no good. You don't know what goes on inside of my mind, my little heart. That surely we could all do better, if not in a religious sense, in a psychological sense, but obviously we have got to clean up this internal act. Now that's okay for those that feel that way, which includes everybody. But if there are those who say, I don't feel that way, then that's okay too, of course. It's not true, but if they can say that. So then you're to the point of me trying to point tonight that if you allow that, you can never affect the temperature or the tempo of consciousness. Because in a very real sense, one description that is fair and accurate verbally is consciousness expends its energy over fear, imaginary preparation, to defend itself. But at least you should know by now there's very little actual defense goes on. There's almost no attack goes on. But it is a constant state of worry, which is exactly, insofar as exactly goes, of what I was using as external political apparent examples of any good dictator, anybody in power, however they got there, even through a democracy. And people are not democracies, of course, you should notice that. Nobody ever did? When did you vote that you were in charge of you? As soon as you got old enough to vote and be aware of it, somebody was already in charge. And he's been there, or she's been there ever since. There is one way, or there was one common denominator of all dictators, and that is to keep the people frightened. Plus you can explain everything. Now remember, I'm jumping real fast. You ought to be used to this, back and forth from what apparently is a political external example to an internal one. And I can change the middle of a word. The people can be hungry. That can be taken care of. You people are dissatisfied, that's nothing. You think things are bad now? Right over the hill, you know who's over there planning an attack? You know who they've already sent spies in our midst? In fact, you know why the food supply is down? Are you people wasting food? No. Do you see me wasting food? No. Think about it. Our enemies have released rats. At night they're slipping in and taking the food. Why are we all broke? Or why are all you people broke? Do I come around stealing your money? Are you stealing each other's money? No. Think about it. They're enemies at work. Fifth columnist. In a very real sense, dictators, speaking externally, can keep the populace in a complete state, just a total, ongoing state of uneasiness, ranging from uneasiness to just abject fear. And do you hear what I'm saying? And of course, jump right back internally. And they can almost suppress any potential uprising for a lifetime, for the lifetime of the dictator, by the continuing cry, raising the specter of fear of an enemy. Even though I can say the enemy is imagined, that the dictator makes him up. It's irrelevant. If he makes him up, he's real. As long as you continue to allow that to happen, and it's happening, but as long as you entertain it, as long as you listen to it seriously, then you're a part of the I'm okay, you're okay generation. You're back at that level. But I'm assuming that you do understand that we're talking about a different dimension to it. It is not some sort of would-be pop psychology. It's not any kind of turning the circuits on themselves saying, well, I'm not as bad as I thought. I found a brand new textbook on abnormal psychology, and Jesus, there are people nowadays that have quirks that make me appear to be Billy Graham. It's not that. It is being aware of the fact that the running static of all circuits culminate right here in what appears to be oneself continually pointing fingers, continually sending out, having produced special editions of every day's paper, always talking about the impending threat of attack or the enemies within. You can keep the populace, you can keep them distracted for a lifetime. You can starve them, you can mistreat them, you can ignore them. Because every time they holler, listen, the sewers are not working again. And he or she in charge can say, sewers? You're going to talk to me about sewers? You realize what may happen to us just any minute now? We could be completely overrun. We could die. We could be attacked and killed. We could be tortured before we die. And you're talking to me about that the sewers are not working, they didn't pick up your garbage 3 times this week? It works. It's always worked. And you do not have to look at history. All you have to do is look at you. This still has to do with tempo and temperature, and it has to do with kinetic, recoiling, and everything else. Everyone is surely aware of the fact that there is a cry that comes about through psychology, but I guess the best cry, if you're not aware of it, if you'll listen to me right quickly, are good red circuit religions and their association with certain contemporary phenomenon. Such cries come out from life through these red circuit religious people. One good example. TV is an instrument of the devil. I read or hear that about once a month. Not just that it's in some way interfering with Johnny learning how to read, that it is actually an instrument of evil spirits. And there are many people, I assure you, even in this part of life's body, in this part of the world, that will not amen to that. Who of you are obliquely, transcendentally red circuit enough to understand that there is a reality to that? In that, D, recoiling, approves of passiveness. And a great example is sitting down and watching TV. Now, if indeed there were Satans, demons, Lucifers, or a Lucifer, I assure you that if the stories your parents and grandparents believed, and that certain red circuit people still believe, it still has a place in body's life, then said Lucifer, were he roaming the earth and nothing better to do himself, and he came into your house and your apartment, and there you laid, curled up, about half asleep, at least one eye open a little bit, watching TV, doesn't matter what, watching TV, he would think, no problem. This person is mine, all mine. You know, another one bit the dust. The recoiling, D/recoiling, if you want to try to cover as wide a swath as possible, absolutely approves of passiveness. Then you have, to carry it a little bit further, these red circuit religions. And do note it's not just limited to religion, it comes out even in, as I said, psychology and just so-called ordinary common sense among certain people. But you're going to find them centered around the red circuit, because life is still talking through red circuit people, predominantly red circuit people. And I'm using the reflection of these fundamentalist religions. The more fundamental they are, and they're still around, you can find them on television, they got that much money. But the more fundamental they are, the closer they are to red circuit centered people. All right, you get to the real fundamental churches, religions, they are against all forms of entertainment, the good ones. Not just television. You can't dance, you can't drink, you can't have coffee, you can't have, women can't wear makeup, the men or women can't wear jewelry. That anything that smacks of entertainment is in some way from the devil. It's from evil areas. Can any of you see that there is a way still, with everything happening at once, that this specificity of life, through red circuit people primarily, life still speaks out against wasting time. It comes out through them, although they have religious terms on it, it comes out on the basis that you should be doing something of some importance. You should be out farming. Or you should be here reading books tonight, the sun's down, but reading how to increase your yield. Or you should be going out taking night courses so that you could get a second job and buy a new tractor. Or you should be here in the house trying to invent a new combine. You should be doing something useful, and it strikes red circuit people, but all of you should be able to feel it. That to be here, remember, you should have enough of everybody in you that you can hear some of all of this. That it's not just me always talking about somebody else, because I'm not. But that everyone should still be able to feel that you are still a sitting duck, not just for the internal attacks from your own dictator, but from somewhere else. For a teacher in school, for your parents, for a rabbi, for a priest, for a man giving a lecture on how to improve oneself, whatever it is, for somebody to attack entertainment. No matter what phrases they use, even if they take it out of the religious context, if they just say, listen, you've got to understand we're in a modern age, there's nothing wrong with television, there are probably some good programs. I watch PBS sometimes, that's all I ever watch, just infrequently. But why would a modern man or woman waste their time watching television when there's so many good courses, there's so many night schools, university classes that you could be taking even free of charge or at nominal expense, and improving yourself. All the way from that to somebody in your religious background, a priest or a minister or a rabbi, speaking about entertainment, a casual life of the flesh, even though they may put it in religious terms like the gods don't approve of people laying around like baked potatoes watching television. They don't approve of you being out in clubs, just sitting around sipping martinis and beers and carrying on little casual sexual conversations with people. Do something useful. There's a way in which that attack will vibrate in a responding manner in everyone. But life in that area that I have designated as D in recalling approves of doing nothing, of being stagnant, of being passive. But then another part of life of equal strength at varying times, but overall it's of equal strength, disapproves and speaks out in various ways that you should be doing something useful, inventing something, reading a good book, trying to improve yourself, and fooling around won't get it. And entertainment is fooling around. So again, can you see that even the most fundamentalist of religions, even the crudest, that is, the farthest down in life's nervous system, of just basically red circuit people, still, beyond any hope otherwise, can only speak the truth. TV is an instrument of the devil. That's right. If they were right to begin with, that's right. If the terms are still valid, it is true. That these evil spirits from whatever part of the world or the universe would certainly approve of all passiveness. Don't do something, just lay there. I want to bring up something else again. Part of it has to do with the overall picture of the limitations of verbiage, which we, of course, or I am, pushing further and further to the edge, but that some of you should be able to have your own perception by now of the fact that there is a true impossibility of correctly turning verbal maps, even though they may be from me or anybody. If there's somebody that could explain it better than me, who understood it more than I do, which there's not. But if they could, there is an impossibility of sorts of correctly turning any kind of external verbal map into a personally understood form of action. And specifically what I'm getting to tonight is the old idea that's been around long before me, not just the idea but the description, that people are helpless. People are mechanical, people are machines. The gods in some way have set up a form of predestination. It is easy enough to point that out. It is difficult for anyone to ever begin to see it. But before one chokes on it, I have tried to sidetrack you, if you recall, by pointing out that people are not simply machines. They can't help what they're doing, but people are not machines. People are people. Now, some of you may have taken that the first time I said it as sounding rather profound, or you may have thought you sort of got off the hook of worrying about, well, how do I treat other people? Are they simply machines? Are they not worthy of any kind of consideration and affection on my part? But to say that people are not machines, people are people. Now, you can write that down and think, well, that's pretty weighty. If you don't understand anything from it, it's not very weighty. But here you are left with the binary impossibility of any personal understanding. Left with the verbal picture that painted as true as it may be within the limits of words. For me to have said, and for you, all of you, let's assume, have had direct personal glimpses yourself of people, including your own hardwired self, your own predestined self, that maybe it was parents, maybe it was a stranger that just suddenly struck you. This person, as outrageous as their behavior may appear right now, as unprofitable as it may appear, as self-destructive as it may appear to me, I can see without any doubt, there's no discussion, I can see that that person is absolutely helpless. And I even got a twinge of great fear, maybe even a bigger glimpse of some crude understanding that that is true all over. But if that's as far as it went, you would not have been served to walk around the rest of your life. This is not the way it works. But if in some way a person got such of a glance, or if in some way I, or even somebody else, but even I, if I could have insisted, listen, to start this off, the first thing you got to realize is everybody is just operating like a machine. There is no such thing as environmental causes, because you should be able to see that all environment came from somewhere. That your fathers are not passing on their sins to you, because where'd they get their sins? The way you say that your father mistreated you and turned you out in this manner, all right, who mistreated him and made him mistreat you? All right, his father. All right, and who did he mistreat? Well, I can't deal with all that. It's simply that everyone is now locked into some kind of mechanical behavior, including you, and you're not responsible. From there, you could go into a super form, I guess, of depression. You could become a completely inert hermit. Or you could, I guess, fall into a side trip of, well, hey, that's the way things are, so I'm okay, you're okay, revisited. It's true and it's not true. It is true that you should be able to see by now. Of course, I will never say this in public, and none of you got any occasion to, that in a quite real sense, as far as words go, no one can help what they're doing. No one can take any willful action, etc. Free will is a laugh. It's a master stroke. But if you stay there, you haven't gained anything. You cannot live on that basis. Because as well as that is true, it's also not true. And of course, you cannot create some kind of new organization, some kind of cult or religion on that basis of saying, all right, here's the basic truth. That is, everyone is mechanical and can't help what they're doing. But also, I want you to understand, that's not really true. That is our basic tenet. Welcome. Glad I could clear that up. Now, you might as well be in pyramid sales or having Tupperware parties. You can't do it. And yet they're both true. And they're both untrue. But it is a binary. It is 2/3 of reality, even at our level. So I was going to try and give you another picture, because I know some of you still have voices. And I mean more than a few, that if you do have occasion for my words to come back to you, of this thing with somebody I know, perhaps my own parents, or mechanical, and there seems to be this kind of internal struggle of, wait a minute, I can't think about my mother just being some kind of armor-plated machine that doesn't know what she's doing. I feel something, which is proper. There is a feeling within blood kin that you cannot explain. And it's not proper if you look at your mother or father and say, well, they're just a machine. But it is proper for you to understand that they never did anything willful to you, either good or bad, but especially bad, because nobody's going to complain about what you perceived as being the good. So I was going to try and paint you another picture. I've never really tried it, and this one came to me. Life sent it to me, and like most of it sends, I like it. If you would picture the world's largest company, I'm talking about the largest company going. I'm talking about large. Don't you understand? I'm talking about real large. Now, forget AT&T, even before the breakup, General Motors, forget that. I'm talking about large company. And the head of this company, I'll say is a he, just so I don't have to keep saying he or she, is a near, to understate it, recluse. that he would make Howard Hughes seem like Richard Simmons. In fact, I should change it. I keep getting too sketchy with you people. Let me tell you the truth. As far as known, he's never been seen. But now he's there. He's the head of the company. Now picture such a company. And all of you, no matter what your field you're in, whether it be umbrella repairs or softwares or the law, the arts, everybody on this planet, even the unemployed, believe it or not, eventually have to deal with this company. You can't get away from it if you're going to live on this planet. And I'm serious, you're going to deal with them. And yet, as far as known, through any ordinary sources, like I said, I'll go from seldom seen. As far as you know, he's never been seen, and yet everybody knows he's there. But it's also not known. This is not just a story I'm making up, because when I say it, you should be aware of it in your own experience. It's also not known. There's a head of the company now. He's there. The world's largest company, and he's there, but it's not even known if he ever personally receives complaints from customers, from people with whom his company has done business. It's not known that suggestions ever reach him. It's not known whether he has, as you might imagine, a continuing awareness of the minute day-to-day details of the company's operation. Now think about it, it's the world's largest. And you've got to be reasonable enough to understand. If you start dealing with, if I must be so crude as to parenthetically stick this in, General Motors. The man may be paid the highest salary of any executive in the country or on the planet. He may put in 20-hour days, but you do understand, if in the ordinary sense, he was as sincere and committed to the benefit of the company, the stockholders, himself, doing good for the public, providing a service or product, he cannot know on a continuing basis of how many people in the assembly line in Detroit are goofing off in the bathroom, how many guys showed up with a hangover, took Coke tops and threw them down the doors before they put on the panels. But then stretched out even further, the dealerships that only have a kind of franchise relation, he doesn't know how many salesmen are at in Sand Mountain, Alabama, misrepresenting the abilities of a new Chevrolet. He simply cannot. But that does not stop customers from writing him and complaining. It does not stop people on the assembly line from putting suggestions in a box hoping he will get them. Maybe suggestions that would help the company move along. Nobody knows. You do not know whether it's possible for him to keep up with every minute day-to-day detail, or whether he even wants to, whether he takes the time, if he had the time, to read every suggestion, to entertain every complaint. But, and here it is. You remember, we're not talking about anything but what we're always talking about. But you have got no choice but to deal with those employees. And you must deal with them on the basis as though what you're doing with them matters. Because I start out saying that no one knows, perhaps, whether he gets all complaints, whether he receives all suggestions, but you also do not know for a fact that he's not going to get them all and hear them. Or you do not know for a fact that he is perhaps behind a two-way mirror here in that one store in his chain, that on this one day, this 1 minute, you get into some kind of conflict with one of the employees, or perhaps make a suggestion, and that is one of the times that he's there, and he does hear it. I don't want to make this, in any sense, really mystical. You have got no choice. You have got to deal with the employees. Every operation, every transaction you have with them, you've got no choice unless you're an absolute idiot. You have no choice other than to operate as though this is meaningful. Not that you're some blind employee. not that I have learned, or not that I've come up with this distinct suspicion that is as large as this company is, and I've got some knowledge. And you do have the knowledge now, because I'm telling you it's the world's largest, and that everybody must deal with it in one way or the other. That you could say, well, I've got the knowledge that the tentacles of this company permeates everything. But I also know, or I strongly suspect, that he who runs this, he who has not been seen in my lifetime, operates in such a dictatorial manner, which he does, that you people really got no choice. That I can come here and I complain at this counter all day, and it's not going to do a damn bit of good unless he finds out about it and he sends word back, give them their money back, replace it, fix it, which is a fair description of how it operates. That the employees have no sense of freedom. They have no individual responsibility. They can only do what company policy tells them to do, and I'm not even sure that company policy is open to immediate question. If I complain to you, if I bitch to you, if I punch you in the nose, I'm so mad, there's still no assurance that you're not going back to him, because as far as I know, you can't even get to him. And so I don't know by any means that you can get to him and say, look, the way in which we're operating in a certain area is making customers so mad, I want to come here and show you, my nose is over here behind the yield sign. That's the way we're affecting people, and something needs to be done. You don't know that he can do that, the employee you're dealing with. But you have got no choice. You have got to operate as though this little intercourse, this transaction between me and you, whether it be 5 words between you and the cashier at the 7-Eleven store, or whether it be you up there wrangling for 3 or 4 hours with the IRS over some detail, you've got no choice unless you're an idiot. And I mean in the horizontal sense, and I especially mean in the sense of you don't belong here, both. You have got no choice. Those that have no choice don't know it, and they have no choice. And those that begin to know better, that's why I'm addressing you, even when you begin to know better, do you see in this company you've got no choice? You've got to operate as though this transaction is meaningful. What's the choice? There is none. And there is no assurance that he will not find out about your complaint. There is no assurance by any means that he will not find out if you did shoplift in one of the stores, if you did cheat one of his cashiers. There is absolutely no assurance, because you cannot look at he who runs this and who is yet to be seen, or has not been seen in your lifetime. You can't believe the man's a complete idiot. You cannot believe that he is actually Howard Hughes revisited, that he is out of his mind and watching TV and sucking on popsicle sticks. A man does not get the world's largest, I'm talking about the world's largest company, by being an idiot. And if he did, he does not keep it as long as this company's been in business, which, if you hadn't guessed, has been a long time. He does not stay in business and make a profit if he has become senile, if he has in some way lost 2 or 3 shingles, for the part of the dressing has fallen off his salad. The man is still on top of what's going on. You can believe that. And so you can't treat it as though, well, I'm dealing with an inept corporation, with an inept company. There are people who do that, and they're not the ones that make the world go round either. They're not the ones that even can tolerate the spinning of the merry-go-round. They don't even like being in any of the buildings that he owns. You must operate on the basis that although it may be everything this side of an absolute given, that you people that I'm dealing with have constructively no sense of freedom in your duties. You have no leeway to make any decision. Company policy, as obtuse as it may be, comes from him. He owns the whole damn thing, and even if he doesn't seem to get around to it constantly, he knows how much the company, as large as it is, pays for paper clips. And if he finds out that one arm one area somewhere on some part of this planet has been paying too much for paper clips, somebody's going to get the axe. Perhaps more ways than one. Somebody is going to catch the wrath of he who runs this company, because it will eventually come to his notice. Even those who have some understanding that you could, for now, perceive in your own case to be out of the ordinary, that is, to have your own beginning glimpses that things are, in a sense, just mechanical. But people are not machines. People are employees of this large company, dictatorially run by a never-seen recluse. But you have got no choice other than to operate on the basis that every transaction, every relationship, no matter how brief, no matter how insignificant it may appear to be with his employees, you have got to treat it as though this is meaningful. And whatever they say, that you know better, they're saying, well, yes, you can trust me. I have a cousin who used to date the owner's second cousin. So, you're not dealing with a complete bozo here. And your impression may correctly be, well, you're just talking, which could easily be a religious man that's telling you, hey, I got an inside. You may know better, in a sense, that that's not true. But you have got to operate as though it is true if you're going to have any transaction with this person. Along very similar lines, let me point out something that is now a part of everyday consciousness in this highly selective part of the nervous system in which we live. That is, I'm just speaking about this part of life's body on this planet. That is, what you read, what you hear, it's an explanation that says, and I quote, "This was all due to computer error." End of quote. Have any of you given this occasion at all to realize that life, in its magnificent manner, has again come up with something new in the way in which life is growing? But just in certain parts, of course, because you do understand that you would have a hard time if you were, say, in charge of the poultry census in New Guinea, and you came up with a figure that was dramatically an error, and you said, hey, computer error. So it is selective. It is only certain parts of the world, but what I was going to point out now, you can read continual instances, almost daily, in papers and news magazines of something that went on. In government, perhaps, that over a period of 6 months, they sent out Social Security checks or some kind of checks double the amount. And now they admit it's going to be almost impossible to collect it back from the recipients. But somebody in a three-piece suit, somebody with a college education, somebody with a good political job, somebody that has a presentable manner on television, will say this is dastardly. They'll admit all the details, and then with a very straight face, and nobody questions it now, it's happened very quickly, that this is as unacceptable as it is for the government to have wasted approximately $2.3 million of the taxpayers' money. It is explainable. We got a new computer, and there was a bug in it. We have tracked it down, and that's the end of it. But you see what has happened, how it is suddenly shifted in certain areas that are highest in the yellow circuit part of life's own system vis-a-vis man, or where man is, that is the sort of thing that 3 years ago, or right now in the different parts of life body, to wit my example about the poultry census taker in New Guinea, it would be unacceptable for this self-same man that I pointed out with his three-piece suit and college education. He came out and said, yes, it's true, the accounting office did realize that my department has sent out $2.3 million worth of excessive checks. Boy, I fucked it up. I did it. Or if he says, I didn't do it, I only oversee it, so I guess I'm kind of responsible. But here, I want you to meet Mr. Phillips. He's the one in charge of it. Hey, Stu, come in and tell him. Did you just fuck it up and you put twice the amount down there when you wrote it out for all these people, these 24,000 people? And he goes, yeah, I did. You do know that is not going to result in the same kind of apparent consequence as it is for that man to say, all right, it's unacceptable. It's the kind of thing that shouldn't have happened. Computer error, though. We got it. We caught it. Know where the error is. Got the bug. Gone. From now on, smooth sailing. They report it, and that's it. But it is not an acceptable excuse for that, which would not be personally acceptable for a mere mortal. Does anyone find that of any interest whatsoever? Yes, we have one. Several months ago, when I was directing your attention toward what I described as public and private voices and some of the tasks I have in the ensuing months since I mentioned it, received several questions from here and even out of town that got this on tape having to do, I'll condense them into a general question. Of people saying in various ways, I've observed this and that, and I thought I saw such and such from the task itself, and I've become more aware of such things going on internally. But what voice should I be listening to? And I did not respond to all of them by my quill. So now let me give you a direct, simple answer, as we all love and cherish. Is you should not listen to any voice that says anything you've ever heard before. Give you another little new variation of an older one that I'll get back to probably as we get closer to doing something publicly. Let me give you a new little temporary, artificial, arbitrary, personally contrived mapping the results in what we all love and hold dearly, humanity or some aspect of humanity, into two camps, which always sets my heart aflutter just thinking of the possibility thereof. This would have to be private and or versus public, that is shared realities. You can put the P of private and the P of public and the R of realities in caps so that you know I meant something specific even if I don't ever clear it up. And I resent you saying that. In times past, as some of you that have been around here long enough notice, I used for a while, I skimmed over and I made some sketches that I didn't pursue in any great detail having to do with a lesser and greater reality, which is a variation of what I'm trying to point to with this. But there is a personal reality, and then there is a public, or shared, might be better, reality. And even the shared reality, of course, has its limitation. I don't mean it's shared worldwide, although there are realities that are shared worldwide, but it's very difficult to see them. I'm not going to try to explain them or describe them. But the shared realities will change primarily from one distinct culture to another, from one religious group, for instance. That you could have Christians saying that the reality of God is manifest in this Semitic man, Jesus. And then you could have Jews saying, well, he may have lived, but, he was of no great importance. There were people around just as important, and he is certainly not any kind of, quote, son of God. And so you could say, well, there are two that although the Christians over here, let's just say to make it shortcut, they share this reality that, hey, Jesus was an actual man, and yet he was a piece of God. And then right next door, or across the border, and within the same nation, you could have Orthodox Jews saying, well, there may be such a man, but, son of God, give me a break. But the shared reality is something greater than a personal reality, whether it be limited to a religious group, a cultural group, a nationalistic collection of folk. Now, I assume everyone has some grasp of what I'm pointed at thus far. The public, with a private reality, and then a shared public reality. the further that the former is from the latter, the more difficult it is to consistently perceive, hold, or defend is the private one. So-called mystical states, try that as the crude beginning. Just that which, as I have heretofore described it, seems to almost accidentally happen to some people that seem to be pursuing such things. Or happens with taking hallucinogenic drugs. The person assures one and all, and themselves, I underwent an absolutely extraordinary experience. I perceived reality in a way that is almost beyond comprehension, and yet I knew it was valid. It was so meaningful that I cried. I shivered. I thought I would die. And now that it's over, I can't really retain or regain the passion of it. But let me try to tell you about it. The further away from the shared reality of that person's culture, religion, the basic conformations of his shared or her shared reality, the further away was that so-called mystical experience. That is a personal reality. The further away it is from the shared reality of his primary group, the more difficult reaching into the realm of impossibility it is to consistently or to constantly bring it back, that is, to perceive it, then to hold on to it, and I said, or defend it. You can put defend / explain it. But by now, do you all realize, on a good warm day, that both of these arbitrary realities I have divided up, that they both are real, but